All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Within Tolerance. This is episode 56, and we are joined with Greg from LumaLabs, and he's a very interesting guy. He's got an awesome Instagram page. We'll put that tagged on the Instagram post and then in the description. But let's just start off, Greg. How did you get into manufacturing? Kind of take a step all the way back. What inspired you? Were you a high schooler that was in a machine shop and you loved it? Were you just wanting to make things? Tell us kind of how you got to where you're at right now.
Hey guys. First, thank you for having me on. It's a real honor. I've been a big fan of the podcast for a long time. Let's see, what got me into manufacturing? I was always like one of those kids that like drawing sketches and thinking of designing things. And so I went to school for industrial design for a couple of years. And it turns out, as much as I like designing things, I really hate school in general, which is not an uncommon experience. And so I had gotten some jobs sort of doing design work. I designed a couple of restaurants in San Francisco or helped with them. And I don't know, I basically made a sort of weird floaty career designing things at the time. And then a buddy of mine wanted to build a better camera strap about 10 years ago or 11 years ago. And I thought, let's do it. And I got into machining specifically because outsourcing all of our manufacturing to various job shops around here almost killed the business like 3 or 4 times, right? Because if you're machining parts in the Pacific Northwest, you're competing with Boeing, basically. And it turns out a little rinky-dink camera strap company making a couple hundred parts is not going to be a priority for most of these guys. And I understand the business dynamics of it, but we just couldn't really make it work under those circumstances. So I bit the bullet and bought my first robo drill like 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And it was the best thing I ever did. Because I've been designing parts for machining. I've been working on DFM for machined parts for a very long time. So it was a pretty natural progression for me. And I just fell in love with it, as I was kind of expecting I always would.
Was this a used machine or did you buy this new?
No, so RoboDrill back in the early 90s made these black, or not early 90s, what was it, 2004 they were trying to compete with Haas, and so Methods got them to make a stripped down RoboDrill, and they painted it black, and they sold them for $34,000, and they called it the RoboDrill Mate. And
Wow.
I think they brought in like 800 or 900 of them to the country. And I found one used. I bought it from the guy that owns Practical Machinist, actually. The
Really?
mechatronic. I didn't know that. I saw it on eBay and I liked the price. And then I was like, wait a minute, don't you run Practical? And he does. And
Did you
he was a
tell him,
nice.
give him a good deal? Otherwise, you'll write a post about him.
No, I think I think I'm your first guest that still loves Practical Machinist. Like
Okay.
I like arguing, and like everyone else is like, oh, I hate that place. I'm like, no, I love it. It's like the arena or coliseum for machinists to go yell at one another, and I don't know.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
It's I like arguing on the internet. What can I say?
So was yours a topless machine as well? Because we've got one in my day job, and it is like the bastard child of the shop. Nobody likes.
Can you
setting
say that
up.
in 2020 that it was a topless machine anymore? Like, is that?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was. In fact, so I share my shop space with another company called Elevation Labs. They make awesome Mac accessories, if you ever hear of them. And everyone in the shop was complaining because the RoboDrill was spewing coolant everywhere. And I am so lazy that instead of trying to fabricate some sheet metal or plastic top for it, I just went out and I bought a Speedio.
That's a big, expensive top.
You know what? That's better than working with sheet metal.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it was like time that was going to happen anyways. But I think I got one of those Lang chip fans, and I threw it in there and started playing with it. And then as soon as I put that in, everyone started complaining.
Oh my goodness, I bet.
It happened. It just happened at the same time that like we were already working on what Speedio to get, and I was in negotiations. So.
Oh boy. Well,
but the fact that it did not have a roof was awful. It was coolant everywhere, and yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, we've got tarps that are magneted to the top at work with like a hole cut out for the spindle to go up because that machine we run oil into. So like 6 feet on every side is like a slip hazard because of that machine.
Wait, what machine is it?
It's a RoboMate, exactly that.
Oh, the black one?
Yeah. Not at
Yeah.
my job. This is at my day job.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The black Robo Drill Mate. By the way, don't ever buy a machine that's painted black. It looks really cool, but then when you have to work in it, it's like working in a cave, and it's terrible.
Exactly.
And
You can't find anything. Like you drop something in there, and you're like, well, that's literally a black hole. I'm never gonna
it's
find
gone.
it. Yep.
Yeah, no, they're great machines. I kind of love those Robo Drill Mates. They're like bulletproof, and they were kind of ahead of their time on features. And I kind of miss mine a whole lot. It went to Hatfield. He's on Instagram, and he's still running it beautifully to this day, and I'm very happy to see it.
Yeah, I think if they had come with an auto oiler, it would be a much more attractive package. But like, I don't know. I just hate like little manual stuff like that. Like I've got to manually grease my TC brother, and it's always such a pain. It's like, man,
Wait, you manually grease it?
Yeah, of course.
You actually do that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
I bought it from Dennis, and I'm not sure how often he did it, but I certainly do.
Yeah, no, I could never manually grease mine. I remember one day I got in there and was like, we're gonna grease the robo drill. And it's such a mess in there. And I like took all these covers off, and I have no idea what I'm doing, which is my big fear of, there's a lot of people that are like, go buy a used machine. And if you don't know anything about like the gubbins of machines, right? It's really intimidating. So one day I thought, let's get over that. So we're gonna take all the covers off, we're gonna get there and grease it. And like I got through all this rigmarole and got this grease nibble on there and started squeezing it, and like nothing happened. And I called methods, and they were completely unhelpful. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, you got to have a metric grease fitting." I'm like, okay, well then we're done. And I put all the covers back on.
Yeah, I found some like clip-on grease fitting on Amazon for, I don't know, it was like 30 or 40 bucks, but I mean, it just clips right on in a split second and greases. I think the RoboDrill ones are all in the back too, aren't they? All the grease nipples.
On mine, it was really a tease because there's this. So there's the table, and there was this piece of sheet metal in front of it with like 5 grease nipples on it. And you're like, oh, I just go there. Until you go look at it and you realize the grease nipples are not connected to anything, and apparently it was optional to have those connected to stuff. So on mine, at least, you had to like go into the linear, like, what do you call the little block that slides along a linear guide of that thing? I'm blanking on the name of it.
Bearing block or something like that.
Yeah, the bearing block, and like literally had to put a grease nipple on those things, and it was a nightmare. And I know a big shop here that actually has a Robo Drill Mate, and they have like a whole team of people that maintain machines. And I've done some work for them, so I finally ran into the guy that maintains them. I'm like, hey, have you ever greased this Robo Drill? And he was like, grease the Robo Drill. And so I don't feel too bad. I think those things probably go ungreased a whole lot in life.
Yeah, our maintenance guy said the exact same thing when I said, "Oh, when was the last time you guys greased it?" And he looked at me like, "Huh?" And I was like, "Oh, yep. Well, I know one thing we need to buy. Like, we should probably do that."
Yeah, they made a real pay. However, all those machines, those were what, 2004 would be the earliest one. And you know what? Everyone I know, so I know like 4 or 5 of them that are still around, and they're all running strong, and I know no one is greasing them. So that's how incredible a machine those were.
Yeah, that's definitely a testament to their build quality. So
yeah.
Let's kind of step through. So you got the Robo, you made some prototypes. I guess for anybody who is uninitiated, what does LumaLabs make? Kind of, I guess, plug your products, plug your company a little real quick, just so that we know why you bought the Speedio, or the Robo and then the Speedio.
Yeah, so I actually did full production for about 2 years on the Robo Drill, and we make fairly specialty camera straps for professionals. So we do straps that you would use if, I guess, you're really serious about carrying your camera. So it's a single point sling. If a lot of you people are probably gun guys, right? So we all know what a single point sling is, but it's for your camera, and it mounts onto the tripod socket. And the reason we machine stuff is because if you look at the bottom of people's cameras, they have all kinds of stuff on there, like tripod plates, other accessories, brackets. And so we need to make various adapters that allow you to attach our strap regardless of what you have on the bottom of the camera, right? So there's a fairly wide range of things we need to make. So we're a small company, we're very tiny, and we're fine with that. And there's no way we're going to be able to injection mold a bunch of different adapters and things. So we machine them. And it also allows us, it's a premium product. We use Horween leather and some amazing materials and American made webbing. And then all of our hardware is machined custom for us. Well, machine not custom, but by us, right? And yeah, that's what we do. We have been shut down for the last 3 months though, because all of our suppliers on the sewing side are making face masks, and some of our other component suppliers are making gun parts, and both of them are unable to deliver anything to us right now.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, we kind of got the double whammy on that one.
Yeah. All right. So,
is it just you making these parts, or do you have a couple employees, or?
Because I really hate production, like I really hate babysitting a CNC machine. I've got a buddy of mine that will come in when I've got like longer production runs. And then my partner, Dan Hawk, who's a local photographer, does all of our marketing and photography and actually talks to customers, because you absolutely do not want me talking to customers. And it works out pretty well. So we're a tiny little outfit, and I split my time between that and consulting. And then it looks like I might be starting up a ventilator company with some folks from a bunch of projects that were happening in the last 6 months.
Oh yeah, I forgot to add that to our list, but we're definitely have to talk about that a little bit. How did you go from designing and machining for LumaLabs to now doing some contract machine and production programming for some bigger names?
It was really mostly just making connections and being a chatty Cathy and being curious about what people do and getting them to talk about it. And a while ago, I wrote sort of a little booklet about how to make high accuracy modes on the Speedio work. And that went around, and I started getting calls from various outfits that have Speedios that were trying to get them to run better. And that led to a number of projects that were, you have to realize that a lot of the really big production companies are not, their core competency is not machining, right? They have machines usually as secondary processes to forging or injection molding or stamping, right? And so a lot of them, they're usually very good at those activities. Like a couple of them I would say are like world class. And the problem is when they get to machining, they can sometimes be a little bit lost, right? And so those are the sorts of folks we work with. And it's usually when they want to do something like really crazy. And they just, they just need a little bit of help. And so they're really interesting jobs to work on. And I think that document sort of made people think I know what I'm talking about for some reason. And
well, as somebody who has that document, if you don't know what you're talking about, you will do a fantastic job of making it seem like you know what you're talking about.
Okay, you want a little secret about that document?
Sure.
You know how I figured it out?
By messing around?
That's part of it, but the big reason is because I read the manual. And I've been very impressed with people. So when you buy a Speedio, you get you get a box with phone books in it, right?
Yep.
And some of them are big city phone books, and some of them are small town phone books, but they're all phone books, right? And one of them is a manual that walks you through all of the parameters in the machine, right? With little Japanese translated descriptions of like what they're supposed to do. And they actually had a whole section on mode B, and there's this whole, we can get in later if you want. There's a whole rigmarole of Brother doesn't set the mode B settings from the factory because they expect customers to do that. But I found in that manual, like their base guide settings, right? And I was working with Amazon, and we were struggling on how to set this thing up. And then one day I stumbled upon those and plugged them into my machine and got better results than we had gotten. And we subsequently did a lot of fussy testing to improve on those results, right? But the base, the Rosetta Stone, if you will, was just I opened the manual.
Well, and that's, I feel like, downplaying it a little bit, because kind of figuring out those poorly translated manuals sometimes is a job into itself.
Yeah, they're a real problem. I don't feel like I'm very good at it, but if you just stare at the words long enough, they eventually begin to make sense.
They've gotten
Sometimes.
better. I mean, like my first job was helping, I was machining and helping fix like 80s Kitamuras, and like those are a nightmare compared to the brother manuals, but they're still not the easiest. I've gone through a few things where I've tried to figure out some stuff in those manuals, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll see if there's somebody online who's figured it out first, because I can't read any more of this.
Yeah, I was waiting for that person to come along on certain topics and they didn't. So I was like, oh no, I have to do this myself. Ooh.
Yep, exactly.
So
So,
yeah.
what kind of, what can and can't you talk about, your day job or not day job, consulting side of things? You've posted a couple things like Dylan mentioned on Instagram that obviously you could share. So maybe go into, you talked about you're helping these companies run, I'm assuming more efficiently. They're trying to, make, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of parts. And you come in and you say, hey, like you're doing this wrong. Like do this, this, and this. Like maybe dive in a little bit more. What exactly is your role there?
It doesn't usually, I usually don't go in on a process that's already set up, right? We're usually going in on, so I think the easy one to talk about, because I can post about it, was Leatherman, right? Leatherman wanted to make a knife scale from near net shape extrusion in one operation on a fourth axis machine, right? They're a big volume company. Leatherman doesn't do high end knives, they do volume with quality, right? And so this is the first time that they were going to come in and actually like machine like a full up knife scale. I talked about earlier about some shops are very world class at certain processes that aren't machining. So Leatherman is a world class stamping shop, right? If you look at a Leatherman, they do amazing things with sheet metal and stamping, right? But they're not as strong a machine shop. So when they had this concept of rolling this part around in a fourth and doing some multi-axis stuff on it, so it was two real big things. They had to do a multi-axis operation to give it this swarf cut on a fourth axis machine, and they then wanted to. It actually was my partner in that was a guy named Jacob Good, who's also on Twitter, but he only posts pictures of his kids and not his like badass engineering stuff. He's one of those guys.
How dare he?
The time though, like these people are good engineers, but then it's just pictures of their kids. Well, that's Jacob. He is in fact a quite incredible fixture and tooling engineer. And he had this concept of the like fifth axis work holding where we try to get it done in one, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had a crazy idea where what if we put some air actuated pinchers on the part, and when we go to do the part off, we would hold the part staple with those pinchers.
Oh, cool.
And then hold it, part it off, hold it in the air, and then the robot can come away and pluck it off, put it in a new one, and go back. So that was what the project was there, and it was also like very rushed at the time, so it was a lot of fun. That was actually how I got into NX, was making that weird fourth axis swarf cut, and it was a crazy project. And then most of the other projects are crazy, and I would say my most successful job is when I get to bill out 3 hours for consulting to go in and tell people not to do something.
So
Right?
the Leatherman job is the free K2, right? We can say that. I mean, we can edit that if we can't, but
Yeah, no, you can say that.
okay, yeah.
And I mean, it was a challenge, the way they wanted to do it and to hit the price points, and I think it was successful. Though, if I were to do it again, there are like 15 things I would do completely differently, right?
I didn't realize that was an extrusion. I thought that was from billet.
No, well, it's a near net shape, so if you look at the outside profile of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The extrusion is just that like shadow profile of the size, but it's all machine. There's no raw extrusion on that finished part.
That's
They did it
interesting,
mostly for material savings.
yeah,
Right?
that makes sense. Totally. All right. So how does that come to be? Does the company come to you with a model, or do they already have machine tools? Like, did you advise them on what to buy? Like, how does that kind of thing work when they come to you like that?
So it depends entirely on where they are in the process and what they're trying to do. So the Leatherman job was they were looking to hit a cycle time, and I was given a model, and they were bidding around to see who could program that job, and we won basically. Other jobs are going to be different. For instance, people. It's a lot about connections of the people that you know and who you talk to. So I knew one guy at another company that wanted to do they were injection molding a large composite aerospace part. And it had to get fixtured in a CNC machine to have a bunch of holes drilled and the flash removed from the outside. And so that had to get fixtured, which, again, my buddy Jacob did, but then it also had to get programmed. And the challenge there, of course, was it's an injection molded part. So they come out in all kinds of dimensions, and the whole thing is like a big potato chip, right? So that job was evaluate, is this even going to be possible, right? Are we ever going to be able to like really accurately machine these things post injection molding? And so a lot of our work is just doing development like that and answering questions. We're going to stamp or forge or injection mold this part, and it's almost rarely, it's very rarely like we want to do a billet part, right? It is, we have this, no one does mass volume production from raw bar stock, right? So it's almost always like, how are we going to fixture this cast part or this forged part, and then how are we going to get precision machining done to it? And it's a lot of work like that.
And was the cycle time requirement simply because they had X number of parts they had to make and they only had 6 months to do it or something like that?
I mean, in all of in any sort of large scale manufacturing, you have something called a takt time, right? Which is
Okay.
the minimum, or not the minimum, but the required cycle time for a given set of equipment to hit your production target, right?
Yep.
So if you have 12 machines and you have a target of making 2,000 parts a day on those 12 machines across 2 10-hour shifts, right? That means that the total time per part has to meet, I mean, I can't do that math in my head because I'm not that smart. But it has to meet like X, and that X is what they call a takt time. So that's the time to load the part, machine the part, remove the part. That's your takt time. And when you get to a certain scale, like takt time becomes very important because now we're dictating just how much equipment we need to have, right?
Yeah.
And so, you're always trying to drive that number down, and sometimes very, very obsessively. Um, a lot of these clients, if you come to them and say, I will take 3 seconds off of a part, but we need $30,000 in tooling, they will be fine with that.
Oh, I bet.
Uh,
Yeah.
if you go to someone like Apple, right, and you give them a 1 second cycle time production, that's worth $500,000 to them over a quarter, right?
Yeah.
Because they're machining at peak 1 million iPhones a day.
It's so insane.
which is why, if people are like, wait, why do you have to have like a 1.3 second tool change on a brother? I mean, that's why, because that 1.3 second tool change on a brother goes to Apple and it's like 1.3 seconds, and Apple does the math and they're like, so we will literally over a quarter save 2 total weeks of machine time because of that 0.2 second improvement, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why we have the X2 versus the X1.
Yeah, which is, the nice thing is Brother and Fanuc are both competing for that business, so they're both kind of pushing each other, right, more and more.
Well, yeah, doesn't Apple have like 14,000 robo drills or something like that?
I think the number is more like 40.
Okay,
And then
yeah.
even more Swiss lathes.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
So
So,
insane.
I guess with any of the jobs have you done, have you ever been approached by a company and they're like, "Hey, we need this part made in this amount of time," and like everybody has tried, like not like all these other companies, yourself included, and they just like can't get it? Like, what do they do?
Buy more machines. I mean, it depends.
Okay.
It depends on. I mean, hopefully, it's about where they are in the process before they start asking those questions, right? Like, hopefully, you're asking questions about manufacturability while you're still in the design stage, and you're
Ideally.
not, ideally, right? Hopefully, you're not like, I don't know, we know this is machinable and we're 6 months away from launch, right? Can we actually make it? So it really depends on where they are. If they're a certain stage back, then they'll be a lot less sensitive to that, right? If it's the time crunch is coming on and they've already ordered equipment and they're kind of locked in, it can get real hinky.
Okay. Makes
How
sense.
often do they actually come to you during the design stage versus too late?
Not enough,
Yeah.
right? Like not ever enough. Like
Yeah.
I want to get in on that, like when it's a napkin sketch at a bar with
Be
the
like,
industrial
"Yeah,
design.
this fillet? Yeah, no.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
So you
Anything where you have to do multi-axis machining, I'll just give you a little pro tip. and unless you have a real multi-axis machine, and I mean like an actual 5-axis machine, don't do it. There'd be dragons all over the place.
So you kind of touched on it about switching to NX. So you, from what I've seen, you've used Fusion mostly for a lot of LumaLabs stuff, but you switched over to NX for some of your contract customers. Let's kind of talk about why you made the switch, what you've noticed, comparing and contrasting multiple CAD systems, CAM systems. Let's kind of walk through that choice.
Yeah, so actually, I would say most of the LumaLabs stuff was designed in SolidWorks and HSMWorks.
Okay.
And then I stopped paying my SolidWorks maintenance, right? Because I mean, why are you paying that maintenance? But they bug you in the interface, like, you're not on subscription, call us. So one day I called them, and I'd been off for like 2 years, right? And they were like, "Oh, we'd love to get you back on subscription. That'll be $4,500."
Oh my
I
God.
was like, that sounds like 4,500 reasons to use Fusion. I don't know. Especially because at that point it was I actually started up. I got my machine sort of as HSM Works was in that messy transition. Like Autodesk had just bought them, and we could all kind of see the writing on the wall that HSM Works was probably not going to be a growing concern, right? And then luckily HSM Works got integrated into Fusion enough that I could switch, and I used that for about a year and a half. And then I had actually, it wasn't just one, it was a couple programming jobs that required multi-axis work. And all on a fourth, because almost no one is doing mass scale production on full 5-axis machines. It just doesn't happen, right? But there are more people that are looking at, they have 4-axis machines because they're very standard in mass scale production, just for indexing parts, right? And they're looking at them and they're saying, why can't we do nifty multi-axis cuts? Because industrial design is seeing 5-axis machine parts, and they're very informed with that, and so they want to try to do that. And Fusion just couldn't pull it off. So I hunted around, and I had one specific job with one tricky bit, and the only guys that would quote us were NX. And I'd always known what NX was vaguely, but it's one of those things you hear that Mercedes uses it and GE uses it. And I actually got quotes, and I was not the first thing was I was not shocked by the price. I think if you come from the world of Fusion, where software is basically $500 a year, well, I guess not anymore now, it's like $2,000 a year. I don't know what the deal with that manufacturing package is. But if you come with, from Fusion, that was when I first started, it was like $250 a year and then $500 a year. You look at the cost of something like NX, which is more like $20,000 up front, and you're shocked, right? But the reality is that's about what software costs outside of Fusion. I mean, if you want SolidWorks and Mastercam, that's about what you're paying. If you want SolidWorks and SolidCam, it's not too far from the realm of that. So it's actually priced kind of where this software generally is. And I love Fusion. I still use it to keep current with it, and for like hobby projects I work on with people to help them out. And I think what Autodesk is doing is amazing. But once you start using Fusion or NX and you start mind melding with what it can do, you're kind of ruined on everything else because it has so many tricks up its sleeve. Yeah.
You
So
posted
now
a video on the Discord maybe a week ago of the manual toolpath creation in NX. That really blew my mind. Like I couldn't believe how much control you have over every little thing in that.
Yeah, so generic motion just lets you pick a tool, and then you literally can step-by-step script exactly where that tool goes in the process. And I think that's really important because on any sort of production job, I have this rule where I never want to hand edit anything. Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Like it all has to be in the program. I need to be able to hit, post-process, and I'm done. Because you're making way too many edits during the iteration process. We'll be spending like 4 or 5 weeks iterating on stuff and dialing it in and just being really fussy about every motion, every speed, every feed, right?
Oh yeah.
And can you imagine if you had to hand tweak each one of those iterations? You'd go bonkers, right? So it all has to come out of the post done. So you have to be able to modify the post processor, and then NX has all kinds of cool tricks that you like. Generic motion is one. user-defined events, so I can go anywhere in my toolpath and send an event to my post processor to tell it what to do. So I can integrate macros or do all kinds of weird machine tricks with that, right? And it's complete control over where that event happens. And I can, I can make my own drilling cycles like from scratch. It's pretty involved.
Wow.
That's really cool. So, what about post? Did you create your own post, or did you have post support through your reseller?
I got like a very basic post through my reseller, right? And the problem with NX is everything costs money in NX land, so like they don't give it away, as Tom Lipton would say, right?
Right.
And so I got the basic post, and it was very functional. But then the CAN cycles for drilling weren't involved, and like the way it handled. So I had to go and start diving in the post. So I basically had to learn the post processor system, which actually in NX isn't that bad. They use a language called TCL or TKL. It's really human readable, and they have a post processor editor program that's a little bit graphic, and it's really confusing when you first get into it, but once you start to figure it out, it's not that bad. I want to make it clear, I can't edit, like if you give me a post and you want to edit like the weird toolpath calculation stuff and like the kinematics, I cannot do that. But as far as like CAN cycles and drilling and high accuracy codes and like retractions for clearance between operations, I can do that pretty well on the post. But like, don't give me like a Hermly and be like, go make a post for this, because I would crash the Hermly. Like,
That's
very
not
quickly.
happening.
Yeah.
No, like here's a Williman, knock yourself out.
So it sounds like you like NX, despite it taking a little upfront, getting used to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a nerd. I like machining, right? And like if you're a machine nerd, you want NX. I mean, I'll just say there's some certain Canadian knife makers where I love them to death, but I'm like, why aren't you using NX, right? Like if you want to go full insert name here,
Oh my
that would be NX.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah,
No idea.
Oh man. Well, okay, that makes total sense. I've heard similar sentiments from more or less anybody who's using NX.
Yep.
Like we had Eric on from Avant, and he said very similar things, that he wanted absolute control over every little G1, G2, and everything, and that's why he switched to it. And it sounds like that's more or less why you switched to it as well. So
yeah, it is a steep learning curve. Like I think there was a post on Practical Machinist, again, happy for them, where I noted like if you just want to use it like a normal cam system, you can. It doesn't take that long to learn. It's the base path is not that intimidating, right? If you actually want to get it to work up to the value that you're paying for it and do what it's really good at, it takes a very long time to learn how to do those things. Which is and learning it, the learning resources are really horrible. I think Siemens is a terrible business to deal with because they don't care about the little guy at all, right? Which is really frustrating at times. And they're like giant, Autodesk is awesome, right? You like ask a question on the Autodesk forum, like the dude that programmed that portion of Fusion will like answer your question for you, right? It does not work like that in an X-Land. Like, no.
Did you ever have a problem with some of these big companies? You're setting up these jobs and it's like, well, I'd use Fusion, but it's cloud-based and they don't allow that because of, proprietary designs and stuff. I know I've encountered jobs like that and it's like, well, I can't even help you because you won't let me use Fusion.
I think another big reason, frankly, I use NX is that I have a bunch of friends that are photographers, right? I make camera straps, who will over drinks be happy to tell you, God, I wish I could shoot some of these gigs with just my iPhone, right? But they also know that for their daily rates of like $1,500 a day, that if you show up and you just want to use your iPhone, your client would fire you instantly. Right? So part of it is they have to show up with like the big Nikons with all the big lenses and all the crap, right? And it's kind of the same thing if you're doing consulting. Like,
interesting.
You walk in and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to program your machines in Fusion." They're going to be like, well, "What?"
Right.
Like,
yeah, they look up.
You walk in with
yeah.
You walk in with NX and they're like, "Oh shit, NX? Like really? Oh, oh, you must have spent too much money. And you really didn't. Again, I will stress, NX is not as people are like, it's $60,000, and it's not. It really isn't. But you do not have that problem. And I think if you were to walk in and be like, I'm using Fusion, they wouldn't want to give you the time of day.
How is
Which I think,
the CAD?
by the way, I
in
think
NX?
that's really unfair, because I think Fusion is amazing. I don't want to sound like I'm talking smack about Fusion at all. I think what Autodesk is doing is incredible. I think they deliver a tremendous amount of value. And I think the industry is going to be better off now and in the long run because of what they're doing.
100% agree. Yeah, it's just, who needs what?
Yeah.
Right.
So how's the CAD in NX? Because that's the only thing I've ever heard complaints about, I guess.
The CAD?
Yeah, like the design side of it versus like I've heard great things about the machining, but I've heard that the CAD can be a little cumbersome, a little over
Oh God,
cumbersome, I guess.
I love the CAD side more than I like the CAM side by a
Oh,
lot.
really?
Yeah, the CAD side is absolutely it's yeah, the CAD side is honestly, my fanboyism for NX mostly comes from the CAM side.
Huh.
It just does. They have a new sketcher. Like they had like a team completely reinvent how sketching happens in CAD, which if you use CAD, the sketcher is where you spend most of your time and effort, right? And their new sketcher solver and algorithm is I just sketch, and it handles all the relationships and dimensions for me, and it's done.
Wow.
Like, I'm not sitting there like having to do much of anything anymore. They just released it. It's yeah, the CAD side is once you get to know some of its tricks and quirks and features, it's you can do things to geometry that will. I get client geometry, and I get usually a dumb solid, right? And of course, they want to change stuff. And so I had one meeting with the team a couple weeks ago where they wanted a whole list of changes, and they were having this, like, big companies, they like to have a lot of meetings and debates, right? And so we were on a Zoom meeting, and they showed the geometry, and we had this list of like 10 things that they wanted changed. And so NX has something called synchronous modeling, right? And it's basically, how like Fusion has push pull and SolidWorks has direct editing. Well, so the NX team owns the Parasolid kernel that SolidWorks runs on. Like, SolidWorks has to pay Siemens for that kernel. And so they know how to make the Parasolid kernel do amazing things. And one of them is synchronous modeling, which is the way direct editing should work, right? And as we were in this Zoom meeting, they were debating, like, well, who's going to do the model? What's going to happen? Who's going to own that? I just did all the changes on my screen, like right there in like 20 minutes. And they were like, oh my God, it was done. And then I sent them back to Dumb Solid, and it was complete. Now they had to go remodel it because they wanted their SolidWorks feature tree, right?
Right, of course.
But here's the thing, in NX, I had all of those edits. The cool thing about direct editing in NX is that all those edits are they are features, right? So you can actually go back and edit them just normally. And it's a really incredible technology. And whenever people see it, they're completely blown away. And it makes, if you have to deal with other people's stuff, like their step files or their parasolids or their dumb SolidWorks geometry, it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's incredible.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. So I had a few questions about production tooling and holders and things like that. So it seems like you've advised and done a lot of these programs, so you would have at least good opinions on them. As far as production tooling concerns, like what changes when you go from prototype into production, and then what are some of your favorite tools that maybe some people haven't heard of? So like production spotting or chamfering or things like that. Hey, Greg, I think we lost you, so we'll just hang tight until it
Hello?
shows. Hey,
Oh,
there we go.
There we go.
That was weird.
Yeah, so we lost you. I don't know how much of my question you heard.
No, I heard everything. You just couldn't hear me.
Oh, strange. Okay, well,
That was odd. Sorry about that. I don't know what the hell happened there.
I think it's Zencaster. It happens occasionally with
Yeah,
us.
it's done this.
Yeah.
The Zencaster was like, "You're too boring," and then it kicked me off.
Yeah.
So that's good. Talking about CNC tooling, my God.
My God.
So I was just saying, like, when we can, I try to set people up on Meritool, right? If we're tooling up a whole new job that we're buying machines for, my default is, just call it Meritool and buy side lock holders for roughing and SK16 for everything else, right?
Okay.
And I would say 95% of the time, like Meritool does an amazing job. Sometimes if we're doing something really, really, really tricky, we'll go to more exotic solutions. And then sometimes, some customers just have existing relationships with tooling vendors and they'll want to use their stuff, right? Because when you're tooling up, we just tooled up like 6 machines a couple months ago before the whole COVID thing, and they are big on Big Kaiser. So the Big Kaiser rep knows all the purchasing reps, and so guess what? All the tooling was Big Kaiser,
Oh, so
and
you
it
got like
was
baby, micro, big, micro, tiny
big,
holders.
micro, tiny, macro, baby. I don't know. They have the dumbest names over there, right?
Yeah.
And of course, they got a website that I cannot tell you how many times I've downloaded the goddamn Big Kaiser catalog. Right? It's like there's like 18, like half my hard disk is taken up with Big Kaiser catalogs because it's the only way it works. But yeah, I actually the baby micro, I think it is, or megabit. I'm not even gonna try. Anyways, all their stuff though is amazing, right? Like I love Meritool, but then you pick up a Big Kaiser tool and you're like, okay, I don't know if this is worth 4 times as much, but it definitely is really pretty, right? Like their stuff is beautiful. So yeah, essentially, I'm very pragmatic. I don't want to use exotic stuff unless you need to use exotic stuff, right? And so the exotic stuff you go to is, I think probably my shop is going to have to get RegoFix PG one of these days, because I'm noticing more and more people are raving about it and saying they're just done worrying about tool holders, right? Which is why you pay a premium for it. And it sounds like the only system where that actually happens, because I know as good as the Big Kaiser Mega Baby stuff is, right? You're still worrying about collets and all the challenges of collets and run out, even with their on-size ground collets. The people that I know that are running RegoFix are just like, I'm done. I don't care about tool running. If the tool is running out and not performing, it's the tool's fault. So I just replace the tool.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I've heard similar things. It's kind of hard to screw that up, it seems like.
yeah, I mean, the problem is it's the Swiss. Wow, Swiss really love what they do.
Oh yeah. Well, they invented the ER collet, and they want you to pay for it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, every time I have to go buy a new $500 holder and call it, they're going to remind you, remember what the R in ER stands for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you ever forget.
So what about tooling itself? Like, are there any face mills or like the reason actually it came up is that I think spotting some holes, and I was like, oh, I wonder if Greg's used any of those inserted or production spot tools that you've come across that you really like, or is there any, I guess, tricks to the trade for something like that where you pay a little bit more up front and you're not replacing a carbide tool every 6 months? Or...
It's called don't spot holes.
See, I've heard this from another big tech company in the Seattle area, and my friend had to go to China to fix that problem and teach them how to spot holes.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you do is you call up a company called Core Cutter, and you have custom drills made.
Makes sense.
And you have them made with, if you're depth, you have them made so that you're running on like a 3/8 shank, no matter how the size of the actual hole, and the flute length on the drill is exactly as long as it needs to be, so you keep it as short as is possible, and you slam it real hard into the work. And you just make a nice. You get a 3 flute, like, because you're getting you're getting. Well, you also have them do the coolant like flutes like through that 3/8 section, so it's coming out, so it's always hitting where you need it to, not like through the tip tool, right? But just up through the big shank that you've spec'd out, and you're using you're doing a 3. If you guys ever used the MA4 229?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, so it's their 3 flute parabolic. This is all for aluminum. Like, no one's machining a lot of steel in my world, or it's all aluminum or plastics. So there are these 3 flute parabolic drills. I was actually posting on Instagram because I've been running one in 1/8 inch, and like running it really fast, really hard. But the flutes kept filling up with like chips, long stringy chips. And the weird thing is that it just kept running. It didn't care.
Oh yeah,
and I was
You were like, "What should I do?"
Yeah.
I was like, "I don't know. Just keep running until it breaks."
Yeah, so I called MA4. They were like, just keep running it. And I was like, okay, so I do. And it just doesn't care. They're really strong. They make, I mean, when we put these things on CMMs to like check them, I mean, we're getting reamer quality holes out of them, and we're feeding them as fast as possible. And as long as, remember, it's all a custom job. So the flute is never longer than it needs to be. And then we're also doing things like having it ground with, if there's a counterbore involved, we grind that into the tool. So it's basically a single slam into the work, and then we're done. We're never, I don't want to spot. I don't want to have to come back in and like chamfer a hole. Like that's for animals. No, we put it all in the one tool and we're done.
Yeah,
All right.
And then you buy 100 of them, and then you make some custom tooling quoting salesman real happy that month.
And what was that MA4 drill?
So the ones I like to run, like in my shop, are MA4, but of course you can't run them as fast because they're not right. You're going to have a lot of stick out from your holder because they all, like on a 1/8 inch tool, it's like 1.25 inches of flute length.
Mm-hmm.
So MA4 is my favorite drill for aluminum, despite the weird chip thing that was happening. And then a company called Core Cutter in Massachusetts. It's actually the guy that was like the head dude over at Helical for their tool setup, broke off to start his own company, and all he does is custom stuff.
Oh wow!
And he's delivered like some really incredible. He's got these. He makes custom tools. He turns them around in 2 weeks. That's his flat turnaround. You cannot pay to rush him faster, and he will not deliver slower. They're very reasonably priced, and I've used them on a few jobs that are custom like that, and they have been absolutely nothing but wonderful. And they always hit their values. It might take a couple back and forth tweaking, but yeah, they're incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great to know. Thanks.
Yeah, if things get really hinky, then you have to call Maypal and like have PCD drills made.
Ooh,
which I've had to do twice, and that was fun.
Yeah, that sounds expensive.
It is shockingly expensive. But in carbon fibers and stuff, PCD is like your only option. Like if you don't want to be replacing tools all the time, right?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So what about blanking on what I was just gonna say?
I got a question.
Oh, face mills. That's what it was. Because I think you've got century mills in your machines.
Yeah, I've got I think 3 century mills. I buy them used off eBay, so don't think that I'm calling up Sandvik and paying like $1,500 a pop for them, right? Yeah, they're pretty cool. Though I've recently, I think every machinist starts out with like a fetish for face mills, right? Because all the cool videos of like big material removal and like the most dramatic operation you see is like face milling, right? It's like a big tool and so when I first bought my machine, I was like, I gotta get some good face mills.
Gotta get the
and hey, it's better than the boom. All right, as long as you're not saying boom all the time, you're fine. Or making a noise.
Yes.
So I found like a century on eBay, and I put it in my 10K robo drill, right? And I probably shouldn't have, because honestly, that robo drill could not run a century face mill up to the way that a century face mill wants to be run. And then I got a smaller one for the Speedio, and I use that quite often. But right now, my favorite face mill for a Speedio is Big Kaiser makes their full cut face mills, which are they're half face mills, they're half like sort of inserted end mills, right? And the cool thing with them is up to the 1.5 inch size, the face mill and the tool body are all in one.
Oh wow!
And of course, because it's Big Kaiser, they're all Big Plus, right?
Yeah,
and they're all through spindle coolant, and they're quite incredible. Like they leave really lovely finishes, and you can run them really fast, and they're just so stable and so rigid. I think mostly because of the Big Plus. And I'm actually having more success with that than I am with the Century, because Sandvik does some funky things where the only way you can get a small Century into a BT30 is like with this really long extension. Like it's like a Capto Century that has to fit into a Capto BT30 arbor. So you wind out with like this massive projection. And if you know anything about BT30 stuff, the rule is you want your tools as short as is humanly possible.
Oh yeah.
And Yeah, our friends at Sandvik have really stepped on their cranks with that, because the only way you can put a Century in one of these things is like with like a 4-inch stick out, and that kind of ruins the dynamics. Even with Big Plus, right? Like Big Plus gets you maybe 30%. It's not going to fix a 4-inch stick out on a face mill.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a really good recommendation. Actually, I appreciate that, because I was looking at what was it, the Colroy, uh, whatever it is that everybody loves, the X or whatever. And they have an 1.5 inch one, but I can't find a BT30 dual contact arbor that fits a 1/2 inch arbor diameter on a
Yeah.
face.
So for the full cut mill, a little secret: go on Misumi. Do you guys know Misumi?
Uh huh.
It's like the Japanese McMaster, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, for some reason, because of the Japanese McMaster, they sell Big Kaiser stuff, and I think I bought my full cut end mill for like $210.
Oh, that's not
Which,
bad
if you
at
know what
all.
Big Kaiser tooling usually costs, I was like, when I placed that order, I was like, someone's going to email me the next day and be like, very sorry, that was a mistaken price on the website. But they didn't. Like a week later, it showed up. Um,
That's great.
but yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I actually just used your recommendation on the spurt gun and just picked myself up one. So
Oh, do you like that thing?
I'm waiting on it. It should be here tomorrow. So I'm super
Oh,
excited.
it's just get the right hose for it, because I put like I think I cut my hose off and like just janked it on, and it does not work very well. So get an actual hose for it, and then it's like you feel like you're Buck Rogers every time I clean the machine.
Yeah, I got the Dash 2 one with the adjustable nozzle, but the second like we bought a cheap $10 one off Amazon, an air hose one, just to be like, oh well, we'll see if it works, and it was super limp, and we were like, oh, I wonder if it's the small diameter that's going to the gun, or if it's actually the gun, and we unscrewed the gun, and we're like pelting the back of the machine with coolant. I was like, okay, it's definitely the gun. So
It's the gun.
yeah.
Yeah. No, the Sput is yeah, I actually found out about that, because there's an integration company up here that went out to Japan, or I don't know if they went there, but they got a real robo drill shipped from Japan.
Oh
And
really?
Japanese robo drills are very different from American robo drills, right?
Huh.
Huh.
Um, like you climb over it and it's like a completely different machine. And I was climbing over there and nerding out over all the differences, and then I looked at the coolant gun and I was like, oh my god, I have to have that. And so I went on. I think I actually got those from Masumi also, oddly enough. Um, and it was totally worth it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's
Okay.
I just pulled up Misumi and I'm going through their Big Kaiser thing, so I'm definitely going to do that after we're done here.
Uh, do it now. Masumi needs your business.
Oh, there
In the
you
time of COVID, they need all your help.
go.
So I have
So
to ask this question
go for
uh,
it.
to help Danny out. He says oil or water. And I just remember seeing the comments on this, and I thought, oh boy, this is going to be fun.
I'll put it this way: is someone else cleaning the machine?
Fair point.
That's very simple. Like if someone else has got to, if I'm just the guy programming it, I'd be like, hey guys, run oil, and then I'm leaving. Where's my consulting check?
Yeah. You might have to hire a
Also,
maintenance team, but
yeah. Also, install the fire suppression system. Just a little tip.
Yeah.
just a little tip.
Just a little pro tip for you there. Just good luck. Bye. Um, no, so I've seen a couple of shops that are running robo drills in oil. I've never seen one. I guess Payton, your place is running them in oil, right?
No?
Mine is, yeah, my day
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm getting the Payton and the Dylan confused,
No
just
worries.
voices in my ear, which is another problem entirely.
Yeah, we run a
Uh,
few robos in straight oil.
yeah, and is it a nightmare of a mess?
It's not as bad as you would think, but it's like I don't like it working on them at all. I'm happy that we have operators because, like you said, it's like here's a program. I tested out the first part and it's good. I'll see you later.
See you guys. Yeah. No, I actually don't think I haven't checked with the Amazon, but I don't think they want you running a Speedio in straight oil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know people do it, but I don't know. I don't know if it's one of those. I know Fanuc says sure they don't care, um, but I don't know if Brother. we'll let you do. Well, I mean, what are they going to do, right? It's like the brother police show up and like arrest you. But it's weird because they'll let you grind in a brother. They're very happy about you grinding in a brother.
Really?
But yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
the 27K machine basically exists for Kyocera to be able to do ceramics in all day long in Japan. So they're very happy to let you grind, do that kind of work in those machines.
Just as long as you got some kind of coolant filtration.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but like the way covers are all, it's grease lubrication. The linear guides are all fairly well protected from grit and stuff falling off the table, so they're kind of okay with you with it. We
Okay.
actually were exploring doing grinding of knife blades in a Speedio, and turns out like an actual just knife blade grinder is faster, right? But you can do it. Like
Oh, geez.
it's perfectly doable.
I would
Would I
love
really want to do it? No, but I'll take. I do it for the Instagram points, but not in real life.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, there you go. So how do you guys go about testing LumaLabs products? You said your business partner is a big photog. So are you into photography as well, or did you just like the design and prototype side of it or production side of it?
I mean, I'm like a gear guy, right? And I'm completely unashamed of saying that I like gear no matter what. So I love cameras. Obviously, I have a Sony RX1, which is a super nerdy, dumb camera. If you're into photography, don't buy an RX1. Um, but yeah, so I'm not actually a big photographer. I mean, look at my Instagram. Like my pictures are just really horrible compared to what I see other people doing. So no, I'm not really a photographer, but he is, and I know a lot of photographers. So our testing is mostly comprised of we'll do we've set up to do fairly basic, frankly, like shade tree level pull testing on all of our hardware. So we're not going to go. You can buy like test rigs that will do pull tests on webbing and hardware, and boy, do they cost a lot of money because that's a specialty piece of equipment. But you can effectively do the same thing yourself, right? It's not hard, and we're only carrying like a 9-pound camera at most. So even with a janky setup, we're pretty confident that we're getting a fairly high factor of safety over anything that will ever happen with a 9-pound camera, especially because we're going around someone's neck, and there's a certain point where like the strength of the system, the weak link is the fact that there's a human in the middle of it, right? And so all of our stuff, and we have sort of a minimum where everything we do has to carry at least 150 pounds without sweating at all. So from a basic safety standpoint, we pass that pretty easily, which is one of the nice things about using machined aluminum. You're not going to really run into some of the funky problems you will in other materials. And then for the rest of testing, we have sort of a cadre of beta testers who we're constantly shipping parts to and getting feedback from and seeing what they think, asking what they want. And it's kind of complicated because we make camera straps, and camera straps are a really personal thing, right? Like a lot of people don't want a camera strap that is a single point, and a lot of people want a hand strap, and a lot of people don't want leather. They want their camera strap to be vegan. And so it gets to be um, difficult to sort of meet a wide ranging market of needs. So I think we're going to go more towards hardware, right? There's a lot of people buying a lot of machined parts for their cameras, and they're all kind of ugly. And I'm like, why isn't that made of titanium? Like that would be cool. So kind of
Doesn't
that's
hit the
sort of where
tack
I want
time.
to. Depending on that's why it's probably true. But there's a couple. There's some companies doing really amazing things. I think Really Right Stuff. If you guys have ever heard of them, they're a big inspiration. They do amazing, incredible gear. But it's also like really beefy and a little bit too overdone. I'm like, let's do that out of titanium. That would be pretty cool. So that's sort of the direction I want to go.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great answer. I also had a question. Speaking of LumaLabs products, do you have any tips for working with leather? I've had some personal projects that have been on the back burner for a few years that involve leather, and I've never really found a good resource on like marrying aluminum and leather together, or working on either together.
Yeah, so that gets into like there's a very particular world of the kind of people that do that interface between like soft goods and hardware, right? Um, And they have a bunch of secrets and tricks that they use to do what they do. And I am honestly not. I know the people that do this kind of work, but even they don't tell me anything because they know I like to talk. So like yeah, like when you get into that, uh it's not something I can really speak to, other than you get into the world of like adhesives and lots of jigs and dies and presses, and it gets really kind of finicky and complicated really fast. And I've actually found the world of soft goods is really frustrating if you want to do very advanced stuff, like if you look at the sort of work Arc'teryx does or Apple does with their watch bands, right? They're doing bonkers stuff with soft goods. I mean, an Apple leather watch strap is, now I know Apple's not a big fan in the machining world, right? But they do incredible things sometimes. And if you look at an Apple watch strap and you take one apart, it's actually like Spectre or Viton inside, and everything is just covered up. And you look at it and you're like, how do you even make that? And it totally blows my mind. So at Luma, leather for us is a fairly simple material. We use it because it personalizes to the user over time. It's one of the few materials in the world that does that without looking totally beat up and crappy, right? And so we do not push leather the way that some folks are. Like Shane up at Oculus does incredible things with leather, and he used to be with Arc'teryx and FYI Design, and they're doing incredible stuff. Go take a look at an Arc'teryx Valence wallet and just see the sort of nuts things that you can do. I would love to do work on that level, but you need to have a lot of volume to justify all the tooling to pull it off. And I don't know if we're really ever going to be there, because we're talking like serious volume to do that sort of stuff.
That makes sense.
So that didn't answer your question, but I got to rant, so I love hearing myself talk.
So is most of your leather goods produced not in-house then? They're sewn for you and then you guys add the machine parts, or?
Yeah, if it was my sewing, we'd be broke like a long time ago. I cannot sew for the life of me. I like have a Juki sewing machine, and I've like tried to and I'm terrible at it. But no, we outsource all of our sewing very proudly to a local company here in Portland called Spooltown. Dana and Sarah, they're not listening to this, but if they were, I would want them to know that they do incredible work, and they are very busy making face masks right now, which is a shame. But they do all of our sewing, and they do an incredible job. They have a great team over there.
Okay, awesome.
Then we had,
so yeah, that's my answer, is outsource your leather work.
I was going to say, yeah, that sounds like the pro tip right there.
Yeah, that's the pro tip.
And then we had a question from Easton, and he asked, can you go into detail on Speedio versus Robo for someone looking at both specs each and trying to decide between the two?
So the Ford versus Chevy.
Yeah.
That's a question I get asked like
you've
a lot.
Obviously had experience with both, which is nice.
I don't, I do. And okay, so you have to look at the history of the two companies, and that tells you exactly what their machines are good for, right? Like the BT30 thing started not to sell to machine shops, right? They started in like the mid 90s. It was Brother built them because they had to build sewing machines, right? And Brother's actually really unique in that Brother and Citizen are the only two companies that make machine tools that are not in the machine tool business. They are in the consumer part to production business.
Yep.
That is what they do. Fanuc is interesting in that they are in the control business, and they're not really into making large volumes of stuff. If Fanuc sells 50,000 of something, that's a banner year for them, right? Whereas Brother sells millions of printers a year, and think about how crazy complicated a printer is.
Yeah.
Right? Or a sewing machine, or back in the day, a typewriter. Right? These very fussy mechanical instruments that they have to make with very high precision and very high volume. That is what Brother does, and they built the machines to help them do that. Fanuc builds the machines mostly because they saw an opportunity where they've got a bunch of customers that sell machine tools like Moriseki and Yazda and those guys. But they realize there's a lot of companies, kind of like the ones I consult with now, that are not machine shops, but they have forgings or castings or injection molds that have to get post-process machined. And that's really where the RoboDrill and the Brother enter the market, right? And then starting in the mid 90s, a bunch of companies came along to them and they were like, we got these little tiny boxes that we need to be able to machine out so we can put hard drive spinning platters in them, right? And we don't want to go buy big 40 taper or Moriseki's. What are we going to do? So Fanuc really got to them first because Fanuc is a control company, so they can make the RoboDrill a better milling machine than Brother could. And Brother slowly sort of trailed behind them and got into that same industry. And now, of course, hard drives have gone away, and now this industry is really about machining cell phones, whether it's for Apple or Samsung or whoever, right? Everyone follows Apple, and Apple has decided, machined aluminum or stainless steel is the design language they want. So that's Samsung's design language. And so that has caused both of these companies to really push their machines forward to meet that demand. And when it comes to which is which, again, it comes down to Brother's a production machine company. They make these machines for that environment. Whereas Fanuc kind of just makes a milling machine. They slap a really nice control on it, and it can do incredible things. And it's a little bit different from the Brother. But they're both very, very, very good because they're both at each other's throats. Brother is shipping as many machines as Haas does now. Fanuc is shipping about 20% more than that. So these are really big companies, right? And they're making a lot of money, and they're constantly upgrading everything that they do. As far as if I'm just a dude buying a machine, my answer is buy a Speedio in the US because the Amazon support is really fantastic. I'm not such a fan of methods, unless my only exception would be you're doing a bunch of 3D surfacing, where I think that's where the Fanuc control advantages come into play. I think it's a better surfacing machine. And I say that being very intimately familiar with what Mode B and Brothers can do in surfacing. I still think Fanuc has an edge there because Fanuc has more people on their control engineering team than Brother has in their entire machine tool division, right? It just makes sense that they're going to be better at that job.
Right.
But in prismatic parts production, right, unless you're doing a lot of surfacing, the Brother is going to consistently be between 10 and 15% faster than the RoboDrill will.
Okay.
And so I would say get a Speedio. That would be different in a different market. I don't know how the support is anywhere else. RoboDrill might be better supported where you are, in which case it would be more of a toss-up. But they're both amazingly good machines, right? I mean, God, the RoboDrills and the Speedio, they're both designed to do extraordinary things in the worst machining environments possible. And they run like a wood burning stove as far as reliability. And
not
I think they're
for 17 years.
Yeah, even if you don't grease them, they still keep running. And that's amazing. Yeah, I actually heard a story from someone that used to work at Apple who said during the sign off for the iPhone 6, they have to, a bunch of muckety mucks around the company have to go to every supplier and sign off on their production process, right? And this happens about 2 or 3 weeks before launch, and they show up to somewhere in the middle of nowhere, China, right? And it turns out this is for an enclosure manufacturer who had 400 RoboDrills and just as many Brothers. This is before the Speedio was out. But their factory had not gotten finished. It was like a 5-story thing that they were going to put all the machines in, and the concrete hadn't cured on it yet. So they called up the PLA army and had them set tents up in the parking lot on asphalt. And they had 500 machines running on asphalt in a parking lot under tents. And they were hitting Apple. Apple is a very fussy company, right? They were still hitting their specs, their CPKs, fine, no problem. And that's the kinds of machines these are.
Yeah,
that's an awesome
so
story.
Really, it comes down more to local support. It comes down to everything but the machine tool when you're comparing those two. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean there are certain things like I said, if you're making 3D surfacing parts all day, I think lean more towards the RoboDrill, right? Or you need full 5-axis. I mean, it's kind of funny because the RoboDrill has a full 5-axis control in it, right? Which is a very good. I mean, it's a Fanuc control. Whatever you say about the Fanuc user interface, they're otherwise very good, solid, very advanced controls, right? And they put that in the RoboDrill, but then they don't offer a 5-axis trunnion. You have to go to Nikken or Yakiwa to get that. And it's that doesn't make any sense. But I think that'll all change when I think Brother's going to have a full 5-axis solution soon, and I'm very excited to see what they do.
Oh man, I hope so. That would be super cool. Well, that actually kind of gets into one of our questions too. Obsidian Tools says, "What are your thoughts on DMG DMP70 as the only mill tap with an integrated 5-axis setup?"
Yeah, it's so sad about those.
Yeah, I've never
So
heard
sad because
good
they're
things about
so.
those.
It's like everything DMG. I've made this comparison before, but I'll say it here. Like DMG is like the Range Rover of the machine tool business. Like they make these absolutely stunningly beautiful machine tools that look like they're really capable and luxurious and lovely, but you just know it's going to leave you by the side of the road, right?
Unfortunately, I have to agree with that statement.
Like, it's sad because, yeah, like the Milltap 700, they wanted, DMG wanted a piece of that Apple action too, and they came up with a Milltap. And oh boy, I'll put it this way: you can find those on eBay for like $25K right now with like no hours on them.
Yeah, resale.
And
That was just like blowing out 15 or 20 of them 6 months ago or something like that for
Jeez.
nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a dud. And that was, DMG went through that whole thing where it was DMG and then Mori, and they came together in like one of those multi-billion-dollar deals. And, it's a shame, Mori's were amazing. DMG machines were always intriguing because, they got that whole European thing going on, right? Like well designed and the beautiful ads, and they're cool looking. But God, that hasn't worked out so well, I don't think, for anyone involved.
Yeah, I think the culture differences between them were pretty significant.
Yeah. I mean, typically when the Japanese and the Germans get together, lots of things happen and they're never good.
Yeah. That's fair.
And it's a shame though. I mean, the weird thing is we're on that Discord with like Stefan and some other guys in Europe, and DMGs are loved over there, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's like they're like, oh, this is a beautiful machine, and over here, I think it's about the U.S. and they brain drained all their really good technical people, and it's kind of a shame because I mean, who wouldn't want a DMU 50? It's a gorgeous machine, right? It's like compact and it's really neat. But I wouldn't buy one. I'm 5-axis, vaguely 5-axis shopping now, and that's not even on the list. Won't even touch it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a gorgeous machine though. They have one at my local community college, and oof, it is.
Jesus, what kind of community college do you have?
Well, they got dumped by Haas, and so DMG kind of stepped in, and they have a CMX 1100, a NLX 2500, and a DMU 50 is their new.
This is like the flossiest community college ever. Like they're
Bougie.
NTX.
Yeah,
It's like the Harvard of machining community colleges.
they also have one of every control too, which is bizarre. Like I think their DMU is Siemens, their NLX is Mitsubishi, and then their CMX is Fanuc. It's
wow.
it's absolutely bizarre. But
all right, kids. Now we're going to learn basic turning on our Mori NLX.
Right.
Or NTX. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember to get your Capto holder ready.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. But yeah, it's a gorgeous machine. But it is, I've heard both good and bad things, but probably more bad things on like the Machinist Facebook group and things like that about DMGs, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really sad because they are nice machines, and the knowledge to build an amazing machine tool is locked away in that company, right? Like they have some really amazing engineers who have made some incredible machines over the years.
Oh yeah,
and
Dura Vertical is like the blueprint for like a perfect 40 taper 3-axis.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, I guess you could say Akuma, right? Like
Yeah.
I would take. I mean, at least Akuma makes their own control, right? I'd probably take OSP over Fanuc.
I've never played with it, but I'm not a giant Fanuc fan, so I would chance it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of your 5-axis hunt, what is on the list so far?
I mean, I'm thinking like a Williman or a Kern. I think that's the only way to do it. You can't make parts on any lesser machine than those. So,
oh my gosh,
obviously,
yeah, sure.
So no, I'm probably I'm I think right now my gut, because I don't really need automation, right? Like I do, my own work I can put on pallets, for the camera strap parts that sort of make a steady stream of revenue. Those can go on tombstones and pallets, and I don't mind. We're not a high volume company. We have nice margins. I don't really care. I don't have to push it. And then on development work, that doesn't need pallets either, right? Because we're just testing a lot of toolpath and a lot of very boring, tweaking of feeds and speeds until we really nail it. So I don't need like an expensive pallet system. And that Akuma, the M465AX, that's a pretty sweet machine.
Yeah, it's well priced too.
It's well priced. It's got all the tools I need. I like the OSP control. Every time I played with it, I've been impressed. It has that cool feature where you can like manually jog in multi-axis, and like it jogs around. So it's like you're using tool center point control as you jog the hand wheel.
Yeah,
which is one of those things that demos well, and I'm like, oh, I absolutely need that. And then if I actually have it, I'll never use it, but it demos well, and that's the important thing.
So what?
Yeah, so I'm
for that,
probably leaning towards that
for you guys. Like, because is there enough production for LumaLabs that you could use one? Like, because you said most of your clients are not using full 5-axis, so I wouldn't think that you'd have as many development jobs for that versus the Speedio.
No, I mean, I would have more. I mean, because I'm noticing with the client work, it's a lot more like carbon fiber stuff they want to do, and a lot of it is just basic cutting dynamics. So it's really because I want the 5-axis. I'm going to just admit it. I want the 5-axis for me to play with.
Okay, that's
right, and get to know,
fair and honest.
And like I can throw client work on it, and it'll be just fine, even if I just run it as a 3-axis machine. And I'm going to keep the Speedio as the production tune-in sort of thing, right?
Okay.
But I want the toy. Like, well, just admit, like,
of course.
I totally understand and can't blame you at all.
Like, hopefully we can afford it. I don't know if we can afford it. I don't know if it's like a responsible thing to buy, but prices are really good right now, and we can probably make it work. I don't know. This is months away. I'm not like about to sign the papers on this right now.
Right.
So.
Well, and
I need to get a new shop, and I'm downtown, and I'm about to move out of downtown Portland for what I think are obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Listening to like the nightly riot out my window is getting a bit much, right?
You mean you don't like helicopters outside all day, every day?
Oh my God, that we had for like 3 weeks. This news helicopter was like we're only. So all the badness is happening like in the downtown core area, like where the courthouse is, and we're, I don't know, maybe 15 blocks away from that. So every night there was the stupid news chopper for like 3 weeks, just all night. And I mean, I felt bad for the pilot because I know hovering a helicopter for hours on end has got to be just the most dreadful experience, right? But
it's like production work.
Still, it's worse because it's like you're dancing on the gyro. And I've taken a couple helicopter flight lessons, and I was like, oh, hovering is. Whenever you watch MacGyver, the hovering helicopter looks so easy, but it turns out it's hard. So I can't imagine that's a fun job.
Yeah, for sure.
Question. Go
for it.
Okay, so Obsidian Tools also asked, this is a really interesting question, and it made me think about this myself, but he asked, what is the one thing in your business you know would push it 10 times ahead, but you just don't do it?
Oh, yeah, if I gave a shit about marketing.
Fair enough.
Like, yeah, I'm not good at the self-promotion or the, I'm not, that's not my forte. And I just really want to make nerdy stuff and be done with it. But I'm really bad at the whole self-promotion, sort of shtick. And I think we've always suffered pretty greatly for that. But we've always muddled through, so it's all right. And I have a very diversified income stream, so I never push it, and I think I probably need to. And I feel like this is a confessional. I feel like Oprah is going to come out and hug me.
And you get a.
But yeah, no. Yeah, you get a marketing plan, and you get a no.
Kuma for you, Haas for you.
Yay! Well, you can keep the Haas. I'm just kidding. I like Haas's. Kind of, they're neat. Why do they always beep so much? Ever notice that every Haas video, like whenever someone says it's like beep 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 beep, you're like, what the? Shut up. Anyways, no, I think marketing is something I just don't think about it, and I don't have that self-confidence promotional sort of aspect of myself, right? That some people have that are self-promoters. Maybe I should go get a self-help book about that. I don't know, but it's definitely something I need to work on.
All right. Well, that's a good answer. I feel like, I mean, I think that's something
Oh,
that every small business can do better, but yeah.
yeah, I'll put it this way. Like, so I was with some friends of mine on the Leatherman factory floor, looking at their like fleet of 40 machines and a giant Komatsu press, and then another giant Komatsu press, and all their toys and all this. And I just had the realization, I'm like, this is what a good product with good marketing does for you. Like all the engineers that I know are like, marketing, and I feel the same way. But then you think about it, and you know what? If you look at John Grismo, right? Like he's amazing at marketing. He's gone out and he's told this very personal story of his journey to becoming a great machinist, and
Allowed him to
he
get a
gets a lot of
kern.
toys, right? And it got him, he got a kern for it. And we can talk smack like the sewing circle we are, and be like, he doesn't need a kern. And it's like, who cares? The guy
Sewing
earned it.
circle.
He makes enough money doing it. He's not broke. And you know what? I am so happy for him. Still going to talk smack on the Discord about buying a kern.
Well,
But
let's be honest.
like,
If you get an Akuma, you can guarantee that people are going to be like, well, you don't need an Akuma to make camera straps. I mean, that's
of course not, right? Like, I mean, I'm totally fine with that. But I mean, I'm saying, like, you look at, John is great he makes a great product that people love, right? And that's how he gets to buy all the cool toys. And God, I think a lot of people that look at marketing and they talk down on it the way that I normally do, we're wrong, right? If you want all the cool toys, you got to sell product, right? That's how it works. You make it for, you don't need to read the fucking E-Myth, right? You make it for $1, you sell it for $2, and you're done.
I don't think I need to read it anymore. I appreciate that.
I just explained the entire E-Myth revisited to you.
Okay.
Right
make
there.
money.
Actually, it's like make it for $1 and sell it for $6, if we're entirely honest. But you get the point, right?
What did Warren Buffett say? That like cigarettes are the perfect invention because you can make it for a penny and sell it for $1.
I, I don't know if Warren Buffett has ever commented on cigarettes, but I'm sure he's commented on label makers, which is very important if you read the E-Myth.
I haven't made it through that book yet.
I tried, and that's why I'm not in the job shop business. I could never do it. Because you have to read that book all the way through, I think. It's like, oof.
So another question of mine was, what robots have you worked with and integrated, and what's your favorite to work with?
I am not the robot man. That would be my buddy Jacob, who can tell you more about robots than I can. I know they scare me, and I'm very polite to them because I know the day is coming. That day is coming when they're going to rise up against us, and I'd like to be on the ledger as one of the good ones.
You're like, hey, I didn't make you run production. I did that to that guy.
Yeah, otherwise, some Fanic is going to come at me. Yeah, all I know is I'm not really a robot guy. I wish I was. It's one of those things I'd really like to get into, and I'd like to do it. Probably, I think the more exciting space is not so much in the what do you call those ones? The URs. I think it's Fanic is coming down on prices for their robots. KUKA is coming down on prices with their robots, and Brother is making their own robot now.
Yeah, so it's like
And
attached to the X2s. You can just like bolt it on the side, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so you bolt it to the side, and it's fourth axis, so it's basically y axis is what opens the door. So there's no. I can tell you. I can tell you this about robots, which is auto actuated doors are terrible, right? And they're always failing, and they always leak. And no one really makes a good one, at least for robo drills and speedios. I don't know how they are in other machines. But Brother's idea to ditch all of the actuation BS and just have the robot slide the door open is a really smart move. They're also relatively inexpensive, which is kind of neat, and they're fully integrated in the machine. So that kind of stuff I think is really interesting.
So I guess if you don't do the robot integration, as a contract programmer, what considerations do you take to automation? Like when you were doing, some of these projects where there were robots, what work holding or considerations did you take? Like, were there things that you couldn't use because you knew a robot would be in the space, or tools you couldn't use, things like that?
So we'll usually do a lot of the process reliability work as far as things like part presence detection is big. Um, Clamping interlocks to make sure, we're usually using hydraulic vices and they have methods of being able to tell if they're clamped or unclamped, right? There's chip management between, the cycle, and that's sort of where our job ends. And you're also sort of in the work holding realm of things, not so much the automation. Um, but a lot of it's just, when you get into something, when you get into projects that are frankly this complicated, right, you're collaborating a lot with people. So I'm doing the programming. um, Someone else, or my buddy Jacob, is doing, the really intense work holding stuff, and we're working together pretty intensely on that, right? It's That's a very collaborative effort. And then the robot folks are going to have to work with us on like what kind of actuator end of arm effector are we going to have to make, how are we going to think through that cycle. So it's really just a lot of sitting down and hammering out just a bunch of fussy details, and then you run it and you see what doesn't work and what works, and you iterate. It's frankly, you know what, the kind of programming we do, there's no rocket surgery to it. I'm not like some great brilliant machinist or anything. We just iterate a bunch and we test a bunch and we find the problems and we solve them when they come up, and that's pretty much the job. That's why we'll spend, a month working on a part, because that's what most of it is.
That's fair. Yeah, totally.
Another question we have from Henry Holsters that I find interesting is what are
How's Henry? I like Henry.
yeah, he goes, what are some of the most useful mods slash hacks that Speedio owners miss, and then how should we think about using high accuracy modes?
That's an interesting set of questions. So I think definitely turn on thermal comp on the machine and leave it on
Really?
and let us do its thing. Yeah. I know that's not a universal experience, but our experience has been across, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them in total, that thermal comp is very effective. I
With
mean, it's
no
going to give
values
you
in it.
thermal comp. Pardon me?
With no value, because when I bought mine, I was told like, oh, if you want this active, you need to run like a study and have somebody here to like put values in and like figure out how it needs to be comped. Not that it was auto comping.
Okay, so this is one of my frustrations with Brother. Um, so it has a default set of values that will auto comp and actually be fairly effective. They are set up. Remember how I said that like these things go into pretty Dickensian work environments?
Mm-hmm.
Auto comp for that is set up for like a 75-degree high humidity shop, because that's where most Brothers are going. They're going to get packed, absolutely packed into like a 4-story production facility somewhere outside of Shenzhen, China. And it's not a pretty place for CNC machines. And they know that. So from the factory, they come comp to like 74, 75 degrees. That is a number in Celsius. And I can never figure out Celsius temperatures because I'm a moron. Um, it's like 30 Celsius something. Anyways, so it will actually auto comp like fairly grossly, like in my experience, plus minus, a thou somewhere in there, which is way better than if you don't have it on, right? Now, you're right. The way that Brother wants to do thermal comp, and I've heard from them, and their experience is that they've done testing with like thermocouples on the machine and try to measure temperatures, and they say they're not actually effective ways of doing thermal comp. It's not that they're cheap or that they don't know how to do it. It's that they don't feel like it actually works the way that people think it does. So the Brother way of doing thermal comp is for you to put a datum or artifact in the machine tool and leave it in there so it is growing in temperature along with all your work holding and everything else. Preferably make it out of the same stuff your work holding is made out of. And then probe it. Or remember, a lot of Brothers don't have probes on them. Very few of their machines ever have a probe installed. So you would manually go and use an edge finder to figure out where that thing is. And then you update a table in the machine to teach it. So it's tracking where it is thermally. It's looking at spindle revolutions. It's looking at inches of travel in all the axes. And it kind of has a thermal model. And then you're updating it with real world data on where that model is. And it will then calibrate itself based on that direct feedback. And in Brother's estimation, if you want to do thermal comp properly, that is the proper way to do it. But of course, it requires a lot of manual futzing. And in a production environment, you can pull that off. It's one of those, like chores you got to go set up. Like, oh, fine, I'll go set that up. And a lot of people don't do it. The other problem is Brother gives you no guidance on how to actually do that, right? Like I can understand that fundamentally, but I've asked them many times, okay, so where in the control do I put that? How do I give me the nuts and bolts of actually doing this? And I've never gotten an answer from them on that. So I would like one. I would like to know how to do that. I even designed like a little calibration stand I could put on by my tool setter so that we could do that. But then, I've never had someone, I'm sure someone there knows how to do it. We just never found them and they've never walked me through it. And I have a pretty good relationship with them. And I think literally no one in the US knows.
Yikes.
Well, yeah. But it's kind of one of those situations.
That's a good thing to know. I'll go ahead and turn that on next time I'm in the shop. I haven't noticed a whole bunch of X and Y shift, but Z, I definitely, can see over the course of a day.
How much are you seeing in Z?
I think the most I've seen is like 1.5 hours over 12 hours. And like, we're talking like my shop's just swamp cooled. So we're talking from like 70 something degrees to like, maybe 90 degrees. And like, that's
a pretty good temp swing. Yeah. But you're in Arizona, right? So it's a pretty dry heat. I know humidity has a big effect on these things.
Yeah. I mean, well, you start adding coolant mist and the swamp cooler though, right. I still get 45-50% humidity in the shop, something like that.
Right. Yeah, no, it's I have to say, like brother Japan is a little bit mercurial about informing Yamazon. Yamazon is always trying to learn about these machines, and brother Japan is a little bit mysterious to them. So it's also, it makes it kind of fun, right? It's like a puzzle. It's like I just bought $100,000 puzzle, which is great.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do with my time.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
But it turns out I know people that are pretty geeky on things like Akumas and Hermleys, and you know what? That it's also a puzzle. Maybe not so much with the Hermley, but finding a lot of these machine tool builders unfortunately run things like it's 1980, and if you look at their websites, you can see that. And so what happens is they distribute a lot of amazing knowledge amongst their applications engineers, and they really don't have a way for their application engineers to share information. And I think that's probably a giant shame. Because I can tell you some Yamazon apps engineer in the United States knows how to turn on thermal comp. I just don't know who they are, right? And they don't know that I'm asking. And if Yamazon and Okuma and all these other guys did a better job with their techs, like on a Slack or something, or building a database of knowledge, I think the industry would be in much better shape. But they don't. Because a lot of MTBs are, like I said, trapped in 1995 with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like one of our questions actually was from Mark Zero Prototypes, and he asked, it was a longer than just probing issues with the Fusion post, but like I had mentioned on a previous podcast that like the Fusion post for the Speedio is not set up to do diameter checks and recut and any of that. And so I think we were talking earlier actually about his question, and I said, normal probing works perfectly out of Fusion. It's just like the manufacturing extension stuff that doesn't quite work right. And I theorized that like the reason it probably hasn't been really looked into is because the Speedios are set up kind of differently across the US too. Kind of depends on what tech you got and what side of the country you're on.
Yeah, I actually have a beta of the post that does all that.
Oh, awesome.
That's been sitting with me for like 3 or 4 weeks right now, and I have not had time to like go in and like run through the full test suite that it needs, because it's a pretty extensive set of testing that needs to happen on that. Because it is for both the Yamazon probing macros and the Renaissance ones. And so it's going to require I like strip out the Yamazon ones off my machine and throw on the Renaissance ones, which I hate using. And that is being worked on. There's a couple of I'm not the only there's like the entire company of Autodesk is waiting on me to get that done. So there's a few other beta testers. And so I know it is definitely on the way, and when it happens, I don't know, but Autodesk is aware and they're on it. It's the beta testers failing them on that. And that would be me. And I apologize to Mr. Zero Prototype. What was his name?
Mark Zero Prototypes.
Okay, Mark Zero Prototypes. His parents didn't like him much, but that's fine.
Well, that actually gets into one of my questions, which was, do you use the Blum or Renishaw probing macros, and why?
I use Blum because I think they're easier to, when I like want to manually go probe stuff or use NX to insert probing routines into stuff. They're so much easier to remember than the Renishaw ones. I mean, the Renishaw ones are just awful. They're like, go call 17 different subprograms based on what you want to do and give them, these weird values. And there's a reason why Renishaw makes a phone app for you to go through and figure out what the probing routines are so you can then type them into your CNC machine, right?
Right.
And there was a guy on Practical Machinist that I think worked for Renishaw for a while. I think his name there on the Practical Machinist is in fact Probe. He actually had this long explanation that inspection plus macros are really meant for inspection, right? That's what they're really meant for. And so they're not very adept at calculating values and setting those to offsets. And that's why you need a lot of rigmarole to make it work.
What?
And he actually, pardon me?
What? I was just saying, what? Like, they should have like named it like that or something, so that we...
No, they did name it on the tin as bad as it works. That is true. But they've always they look at all the work Renishaw does to have an app on the machine, to have an app on your phone to like teach you how to run the Renishaw macros. And it's like I'm not checking bolt hole circle patterns in my machine, right? So I don't really need all that complexity. And the Blum / Amazon macros, they get it done real fast. They're easy to program. I just think they're way nicer to work with every day.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Renishaw has a little bit more power to it. Like, there's some stuff that's missing from the Blum that I would like a 3-point bore or a fourth axis leveling routine. But besides that, like, I really like that the Blum ones are all broken out into separate programs, and like, what they're doing already. So like, that's more or less why I stuck with Blum too.
I mean, the nice thing is the Blum ones are simple enough that you can, I mean, except for the 3-point bore, right? Any crazy stuff you want to do with it, the data is right there in the macro variables. So it's pretty easy to pull that as you need and sort of do a lot of funky things with it. So
yeah,
that's been my experience. And then, for production stuff, we write our own macros, from scratch.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, it's not hard, right? It's like a skip signal. It's not. It's kind of. I remember when I was first like, oh my god, probes. These have got to be really complicated. And then you realize it's a switch with a skip signal,
Yeah.
right? It's not. I had to write them for my robo drill, and then for production, they're fairly straightforward to write. Write for anything once you do it once.
Yeah.
It sounds impressive, but it's really not. It's like you get that CNC custom macros book by the I have it here on my desk. What's his name? The Paul Smid guy.
Yep.
And you read that and you're done. It's a fantastic book, and I think anyone that wants to program a CNC machine should have one.
Yeah, I still haven't quite made it through that book yet. It's a little dense, but I do have it, and I am reading it for that exact reason.
Yeah, don't read the whole thing because it's mind numbing, right? Just like skip to the parts that you need when you need them. Otherwise, that's a rough book to read.
Yeah.
It just is light summer reading. Get your sangria, read the macro book on a porch. Don't do that.
Yeah, fall asleep on the porch, wake up again, try it again.
No, it's a terrible book for that.
Yeah.
Then the last question from my buddy Albert says, what makes the Brother machine so loved by their owners? Other than just speed, what sets them apart and makes people that have them love them so much?
Oh, I saw that question. I thought that was a good question. I think because they're really reliable. Well, let's back up. I think the first thing is that you have a lot of like geek owners. There's a lot of guys in garages with Speedios. Almost no one buys a RoboDrill for their garage, right? So you get a lot of nerdy guys like Jared Drinkwater. Do you guys remember him?
Oh yeah,
the Practical Machinist in the Instagram. Yeah, I mean he kind of started the trend, right? He he buys the Speedio. He's got kind of a cool aesthetic about himself, and he was making these badass parts in his garage, right? And there's a lot more Speedio owners like that than there are robo-drill owners. And so it sort of makes for a community of people that are on the small scale manufacturing side that are doing really neat things with these machines, like Henry Holsters, right? Uh, and so, and you know, because you're seeing the parts that these people are making and they're making that personal connection of the gear that they're building, I think it makes for a pretty passionate community. And uh, you know, this was Yamazin sort of encouraged that, and they were very smart to do it. Um, and I think they're really good machines, right? You're not buying some, you know, weirdo hobby mill. I mean, these are serious machine tools. Um, I would say more parts are machined on this class of machine than any other machine in the world. And that's kind of neat when you think about it. So it's a real machine tool. It's really geeky. You can always make it do what you want when you really dive in and you start futzing with things and pulling levers and knobs and switches. And they're just so reliable too. I mean, you know how many times I've had to put the new greasing in my Speedio? Like zero. Like, you don't worry about it. It's like grease away lubrication. I don't care anymore. Like, maintenance is replace that and some 3 AA batteries and you're done. And I don't know, they're really satisfying to work with, and I think Yamazin is a great company, and it's fun to watch it go real fast, right? I mean, you have to make it go slow a couple times first, and then, you know, don't crank up everything to 100 and then, you know, send it. That's a bad idea with these machines.
Yeah, it's a really good way to break your spindle or scare yourself or both.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily I haven't broken a spindle yet, but I've come close a couple times. Oof.
Yeah, well, you've seen enough. We've talked a little bit through DM, and it sounds like you've seen plenty of blown up speedios. Unfortunately,
Yeah, like they do not suffer fools, right? Like they really don't. Like stuff that's like, oh, I broke a tool and I ruined a workpiece in a Cat 40 machine. You know, you're buying a new spindle in a Speedio, and that kind of sucks. But you know, everything has a trade-off. The reason why the machine is so fast is because it's BT30, right? It's not having to throw around like a giant spindle cartridge, and you can put a big turret around instead of, you know, a side mount tool changer. So everything has its advantages and disadvantages, and as long as you're careful, um, they're absolutely incredible. And I think it's rewarding to be able to, like, I mean, I find a lot of enjoyment in taking apart and like knocking 40% off the cycle time, right? Like it's very satisfying to know that this thing was taken like 3 minutes before and we're down to like 2 minutes now, and I can probably get it down to like 150, 145. And if you want to do that kind of stuff, it's the machine to buy.
definitely, totally agree.
I mean, I don't know what kind of human actually wants to do that stuff. That's a pretty nerdy hobby to have, if we're entirely honest, but you know, there it is.
We've said it before on this podcast. I think a lot of the people listening and a lot of people on Instagram are machine nerds. Like, we all love CNC. That's why we're part of this community. So I think that you're definitely speaking to the hearts of a lot of people listening.
Oh, so I'm not alone? You're telling me I'm not alone?
Basically.
Not alone.
I don't know. I feel pretty alone sometimes. It's definitely,
We all do.
you know, I try to explain what I do to my girlfriend, and she's like, whatever. How much money are you gonna have to spend on tools this week, Greg? And I'm like, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Honey, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's just it's so much. Well, yeah, I had to buy some stuff from Swift Carb today, so that was painful.
So is that something you use in your personal shop, Swift Carb?
A little bit. Again, like my I have like my standard go-to, which do you guys have Western Tool down there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have their WHAM series of end mills. They're like Western aluminum milling, and I've actually found those are really quite good for the price. And again, like I don't want to use exotic stuff unless I need to, and so I use Meritool, and that is my standard. But I want to do some better finishing faster on some parts, and so we're gonna try. Well, I'm not gonna try because I know they work, but 3/8 Swift Carb AF5, which is their 5-flute aluminum finishing end mill, and it is the nuke it from orbit option for aluminum finishing. And like if you if you can't make that thing work and give you a beautiful finish, then you know maybe reconsider what you're doing otherwise, because they're amazing. Also, all Swift Carb tools are like gorgeous. Like they just do a really good job. They again do not give them away, so I don't Like I said this today on PM, but it's like, I'm not saying you should go fill a Lista up with Swift carbs, unless you're like the Apple ID shop, right? Everyone else, like, just buy them when you need them. And I needed them, so I bought some.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know. I've tried a little bit of Swift Carb in the past for stainless, and they were pretty decent. But I've always had issues finding like a good supplier for them. So
Yeah, for any sort of steel stuff, that it's really hard to beat that helical A+ coating
yeah,
in general. I mean, it's like, yeah, I haven't seen anything perform. Not that I do a lot of steel, but I know folks that do more steel than I do, and they're just all Swift Carb, or no, sorry, helical, with the A+ coating.
yeah, I
And
really enjoy Helical. I don't like dealing with their distributors either, but they seem to be at least a little easier than Swift Carb to get a hold of, for me at least.
yeah, no, I mean, again, it goes back to that. A lot of this industry is trapped in like 1990, and it's so maddening. It's just, it gets my goat every time. It's like, where is the Amazon of just buying machine tool stuff?
Right, right,
Like,
exactly.
why do I have to call some guy who's going to go get me a price quote on some? And it's like, no, just I want to click like the monkey with the button and get my end mills like 2 days from now. That's all I want.
Yeah. Well, and I want to be able to order in my boxers at 2 a.m. and not wait till the next day when I'm, lucid again and realizing maybe I don't need those end mills.
Right? No, exactly. They're putting money on the table that they're leaving by having to deal with salespeople who add like no value. Like I call up my sales guys or these guys, and I'm like, hey, is this going to work for this app? And they're like, sure, of course it will.
Just buy it, please.
Yeah, it's like, so what are you guys making 40% for? Like, why? Yeah, I think that's all gonna eventually come to an end. I don't think this internet thing is gonna blow over. So hopefully someone's gonna walk in and like maybe sort that out. I mean, maybe, God knows, maybe it'll be Amazon, which would probably not be great for us all. But like McMaster gets it, right? I mean, I just want McMaster, but for tools, right? And I know McMaster sells end mills, but they don't tell you what brand, and they're kind of janky on the specs. And if you're real finicky about what you want, McMaster's not the place to buy it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But like, why doesn't that exist now? I don't know. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like YG1 is the only one who has jumped aboard the Amazon train, and people love them for that reason, I think.
Are you guys running any YG stuff?
I do.
I've tried it a little bit here and there, and it's been good in aluminum.
I think it's great. Yeah.
For only aluminum?
I've never tried anything else from them, just their Aluma Power series.
Right.
But the fact that I can get it next day from Amazon, that's the only reason I've bought the two end mills that I have from them, is like, oh, I forgot to order this from MSC. I'm not paying overnight shipping. Oh, I can get it from Amazon tomorrow. Great.
Right. No, the terrible thing with aluminum is, of course, no one wants to make aluminum tools because they make no money selling aluminum tools.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, I've had the same Diamondback in my machine for maybe a year now. Right. And it's like, it's fine. I'm not going to have to buy another one. I bought 3 of them because you got to buy 3, but it's fine. So it's like, I don't know how much money you make selling aluminum tools. It's kind of sad, really.
Yeah, it's too bad, because it seems like it's a big industry, but again, like you said, it's very competitive, and nobody wants to invest in something that you're buying one every couple of years. You're hoping that people crash their machines.
You're hoping they crash, or you're hoping. I mean, the steel guys, different matter entirely, right? Like I've been to some outfits. Like there's one place around here that has a room full of UMC 750s that does titanium cast parts, and I got a tour their place once, and they literally had a pallet full of IMCO. What are those IMCO 525s? They're like 5 flute MLs that are pretty great.
Oh yeah.
And they were all 3/8, 1 inch length of cut, and they had probably, I don't know, maybe 200 of them there, just waiting.
Jeez.
And they're like, oh yeah, that's about our monthly purchase of those.
A pallet.
And I was like blown away. Like, a lot of production shops, they buy everything by the 100, right?
Yeah.
Just when we do custom drills, right? Like when I said you order 100 from them, I wasn't kidding. They'll order 100,
Wow.
and so you get a big discount when you order that many, so that helps. But yeah, no, aluminum though, you don't need to buy that many. I don't know, the whole tooling thing, it's so frustrating. There's all this cool stuff I want. I remember like John Grimsmo showed off that Sylvant air gun, and I wanted one of those.
They're so
He showed them a
expensive
while
though.
ago. You know what though? When I first looked them up, I guess they now do online ordering, but like when I first looked them up, they were like contact sales, and I'm like, you fucking kidding me? I'm not gonna contact a sales guy to buy a blowgun from my mill. Like that's insane. Like
I did
you know,
did that, and then I saw the price, and I was like, I'm gonna go buy a $10 Vacula that I know works really well. I'll see you when I
how
break
much
10 more of these.
how much are they?
The last time I got a quote on them, they were like 120 or 130 bucks a piece.
Oh my god. Okay, yeah, that's a bit much. I mean, are they really good though?
I don't
Like,
know.
are they
Never. I don't know if they're $130 good. They look really cool, and if they were that quiet, it'd be really nice. But like, I could literally buy 12 of the ones that I use now that work fine for that, and it's like, I'll save my money for now.
like if it really blew me away? Like,
Literally.
yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, that was not intentional.
Sure.
I did not mean to say that.
Yeah, I believe.
So can I ask you a question about the brick? Like you do injection molding,
Yep.
right? So you do it
Yep.
yourself? Is that sounds crazy to me?
It is,
Is that as crazy as it
it's
sounds to
pretty
me?
crazy. It's a whole new world, that's for sure.
Because there's that company on Instagram. I'm sure you'll know who I'm talking about, but I'm blanking on the name right now. That's doing like a little desktop injection molding machine.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of those. I know what you're talking about though.
It's like the good looking
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it's like orange and black or
Like,
something.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
one. Like, what do you think of that?
I've always wanted to build one like that. I think that's going to be kind of like the next thing for like 3D printers, right? Everyone can get into a new industry, right? Like there's like the desktop CNCs, there's the 3D printers, and now people like us could get into injection molding or at least dabble in it.
I mean, what kind of injection molder? I mean, you've got like the real ones, right?
I hope so. I mean, I've got a air pneumatic one, and then I've got a 22-ton press.
That means nothing to
So
me. I'm
like
going to be entirely honest.
like
There's a number.
yeah, it's
That's a big number. 22
yeah,
tons.
I don't make garbage cans, but I I also don't make 5-gallon buckets. So I make like, fist size parts.
Right. I mean, but if you think about the scale that a lot of us are working, like fist-sized parts are kind of where, in the EDC world, which I think drives a lot of Instagram
Yeah.
machinists, right? Because we're all making knives and pocket tchotchkes and, I don't know, X-Acto knives for your keychain. That's kind of that's where that scale is,
Yeah.
right? And so I know I'm very interested in that sort of stuff going forward. But I've designed a couple of injection mold parts for Luma, like we did our carbon slides. But the problem is that the guy that was making them like sold his
Oh
company,
geez.
and yeah, and he was incredible. He was this really crazy guy who like had his own injection molding machines made. He was
Yeah.
he was doing all kinds of weird stuff, and then a big company bought him out one day.
Huh.
So I'm like, maybe I should get an injection molding machine.
It's definitely, I mean, anyone can learn it. I'm just proof of that, but it's definitely people, they're like, oh, I'm a machinist, I could make a mold. It's like there's more to it. Like it's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna take a block infusion and combine cut this and there's a mold cavity. Like, yeah, okay.
Wait, it doesn't work
No,
like
I
that?
know. It's very unfortunate.
Oh my god, I thought,
Oh,
I thought you just hit print and it was
yeah.
done.
The green
That's
button
weird.
has a lot of red tape over it.
Oh wow, I gotta use that one. That's gonna be, yeah.
My guess is the desktop one will end up being like the Wazer, where it's like promises far more than it delivers.
Well, there's a bunch of
There's
Kickstarters for like similar injection molded, like small machines, and there's a couple of them that were just straight up scams. Like, and it's kind of a crazy little niche market there for those machines.
Well, there's that Swiss Mac guy who's going to make a 5-axis mill turn for like 4,000. I forgot what the
Whoa,
number was,
what?
but that was a whole thing.
Yeah, the one that
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way: it's not going to work. So don't let the price fool you, right?
Yeah.
And I think he got sidetracked because he had to move to China, which is always the number one way that you know that your Kickstarter funds are secure, is when the owner of the company absconds to China, or was it Taiwan? One of the two, I forgot which one. And now he's now making like CAD software that you can just give it your part and it will figure out how to 5-axis mill turn machine it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Wilman is real afraid right now. They're quaking in their boots. Right? Like that could be. Yeah, there's a lot of those sort of scammy things, which is sad because I think it's really exciting to see like desktop class. Yeah. Before I got my own CNC machine, I really wanted like the desktop thing, right? And I'm glad I didn't go down that road because that looks just really punishing.
You got lazy with the
on so
sheet
many
metal.
levels.
You got lucky.
I was working. I had to do all this. I had to learn sheet metal for this ventilator project I was on, and I just like with leather. I've learned with sheet metal the best thing to do is find a great supplier and just leverage them. Right. Just be like, yeah, you guys do that, and here's my sketch. Can you turn that? Okay, thank you. Gotta know when to outsource until you start getting your volume of parts up to a point where you really need to like get in detailed with the skill, right?
It's a good way to put it.
Definitely.
Like don't try to learn everything at once because this whole industry is nothing but rabbit holes, right? And they're all if you're a machine nerd, they're also like if I watch one more Robin Renzetti video and I feel like I need to buy a surface grinder, oh, it's so bad. Because he makes it look so easy, right? He's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna over the next hour, I'm just gonna make my own like lathe insert holders." And you look at it, you're like, "I could do that." And
Then you get everything set up, and you're like, I can't.
Yeah, you'd be like $20,000 of gear from Herman Schmidt later, and you'd be like, "Really? Oh, God." But Renzetti makes it all look so easy, right? He's like, "Oh, what you do is you just buy the carbide and you put a spherical end on it." Okay.
I'm just picturing someone that just spent like 20 grand and they have everything lined up on a table with a YouTube video pulled up on an iPad, and they're like, okay, time to rewatch this.
For the 50th time. Yeah. No, I really did. Do you guys remember your first Robert Renzetti video?
I think I do.
For me, it was that one where he just like starts ripping apart some Mitutoyo like calipers. He's like, "We're just gonna remake these." You're like, okay,
Oh,
sure.
goodness.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that guy's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
So
he is.
but I'm still like now I'm surface grinder shopping on like
Oh,
Craigslist,
shoot.
right? Like,
Oh, I do all the time. I'm like, I probably don't need this, but I really want one. Like, it would be really
yeah.
nice.
I mean, what would I do with it? It would be like my rowing machine, right? Like it's just gonna collect dust. I've got one, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Or I could buy a shaper.
Oh no.
Oh, I've got one. Yeah, I've had one
You what?
I have one for a couple of years now that's been sitting collecting dust while we attempt to rebuild it, and I don't think we've touched it once. So,
Wait, you have a manual shaper?
oh yeah. We got
Since when?
I don't know, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
You gotta, okay, your homework, Dylan, is post a picture of that tomorrow. No caption. Just
post it.
Just post a picture. Don't say anything.
All right, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Oh man. Well, Greg, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Before we go, you want to plug, your Twitter, Instagram, website?
Uh-oh. You left too soon.
I still got him in my window. I think
Yeah.
he just
Greg,
cut
we
out
can't
again.
hear you, by the way.
What?
There it is.
Is that? Hey, yes. No, you found my Twitter and you canceled me based on what was on there.
Yeah, that's what it was. I said Twitter, and it was like, nope, never mind.
No, the system checked and was like, oh wait, no. My Twitter is pretty terrible. My Instagram is I think it's LumaLabs LLC. We have two. We have like Dan, my marketing guy, has the pretty one with like all the pictures, and then I have the screwed up one that's just followed by machinists with like pictures of terrible things I've done to aluminum and crashes.
Yeah,
That's the more fun one. If you're listening to this, you want that one, not the other one, right?
yeah.
Because the other one is just hipsters with camera straps. Who cares? Did I say something that was bad at marketing?
Yeah.
It's probably me being bad at marketing, like right there. And then my Twitter is GAC_PDX. And wait, is it underscore? I always forget. And I never send people to my Twitter because it's a horrible, horrible place. Like it really is. Like I'm GAC_PDX. That's my initials.
And then your website for people to check out your products
is luma-labs, labs.com.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time, and I definitely learned a lot, and now I know some buttons I need to go push on my Speedio when I get to the shop tomorrow. And
just push them and just hit the cycle start button. I guarantee you it will work.
All right, yeah, I'll take that.
And make sure everything is cranked up.
Boy.
Rapids 100, speeds 100. Just let it go.
Yeah,
she wants to run free.
She wants to run free. Let her.
Yes,
just let her be. Live up.
You gotta
to her
make the
name.
grr sound.
You gotta do the Titan. Just make sure you hit boom when you hit the button, and that'll protect you.
Yeah,
it's like your protection from the dark arts right there.
I can't quite hit 800 inches a minute, so I don't think there's any point.
Cutting air.
What we're gonna do? Oh, by the way, don't do that thing where you just take a face mill in a Speedio and just run it until it fails, and then back it off like 10. Don't do that. That's a terrible practice.
Really? Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, there goes my plan. What am I supposed to do?
Use your shaper.
Yeah.
You can do that with a shaper.
All right.
Just run it up. Yeah.
All right. Anyways, guys, we'll see you next week with Dylan and I.
And I won't be here, so thank God for that.